The storm outside screamed against the old mansion walls like an angry spirit, rattling windows and shaking the ancient doorframes. 18-year-old Elara pressed her back against the cold stone wall of her small room, clutching her blanket tighter around her trembling frame. She had grown used to the silence of her nights where loneliness sat beside her like a shadow, but tonight, something felt different. The wind carried a strange heaviness, and then, out of nowhere, a dull thud echoed from behind her cupboard. Her heart stuttered. For a moment, she thought it was the storm playing tricks. But when she turned and saw a dark trail of blood seeping slowly across her floorboards, her scream caught in her throat. A man, unconscious, bleeding, and terrifyingly still, lay hidden behind her cupboard. The sight froze her in place. He was tall, his body scarred, his clothes soaked in blood and rain. A gun, real, cold, and heavy, rested near his hand. Elara's world spun in disbelief. She was just a maid. Poor, unnoticed, invisible to everyone in that grand estate. And now, somehow, death itself seemed to have stumbled into her little room. Her heart pounded as she crouched beside him, torn between fear and something far deeper, a faint, inexplicable pull of compassion. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know that the man bleeding before her was the most feared name in the city's underworld, the ruthless Mafia boss, Adrian Voss, whose mere shadow made men tremble. If you believe that kindness and second chances can change even the darkest hearts, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to StoryNest. Because this story, this one will remind you that even the most broken souls can still find light. Elara's hands shook as she pressed a torn piece of her blanket against his wound. The blood wouldn't stop. Panic surged through her veins. The mansion was asleep. If anyone found out she was hiding an intruder, she'd be thrown out, or worse. Yet she couldn't walk away. Something inside her refused to let another human being die, not like this, not when she could still do something. She dragged his heavy body to her narrow bed and worked for hours in the dim glow of a candle, cleaning and binding his wounds with trembling fingers. The smell of iron and storm lingered in the air, the sound of rain drowning out her whispered prayers. Days passed before he opened his eyes. When he did, they were sharp, like shards of gray steel. He looked around, confused, weak, but alert. Elara stepped back, frightened by the fire in his gaze. He tried to speak, but his body failed him. She brought him water, soup, anything she could find from the mansion's kitchen without raising suspicion. Each night she prayed he'd survive. Each morning she feared what would happen if he did. The more she cared for him, the deeper her worry grew. Who was he? Why did he have that gun? Why did the air around him feel so dangerous, even in his weakness? Over the following nights, fragments of his past slipped through his fevered dreams. Names. Gunfire. Betrayal. He murmured things that made her blood run cold. She realized he wasn't some lost traveler or wounded soldier. He was someone powerful, someone used to danger, someone hunted. And yet, when she looked at him, she didn't see a monster. She saw a man broken by his choices, fighting demons she couldn't understand. There was pain behind his silence, sorrow behind his strength. Elara's own life had been nothing but struggle. Orphaned at 12, she had grown up scrubbing floors, serving meals, and sleeping in servants' quarters that smelled of mildew and soap. The mansion owners barely remembered her name. But she had learned to survive, not through power or deceit, but through quiet endurance. And for the first time, as she nursed this wounded stranger, she felt her kindness mattered to someone. When Adrian finally regained enough strength to sit up, his first instinct was suspicion. He had been betrayed by his own men, ambushed, left to die. He didn't trust anyone, not even the girl who saved him. But there was something disarming about Elara's simplicity, the way she spoke softly, avoided his eyes, and never asked for anything in return. No one had ever cared for him without motive. No one had looked at him as just a man. The days grew quieter. She told him stories about her village, her childhood, her dream of someday leaving the mansion and opening a small bakery near the sea. He listened in silence, though his mind still carried the weight of his empire, his enemies, and the blood he had spilled. But each word she spoke felt like light finding its way through the cracks of his hardened heart. For years, Adrian had believed that power was the only language the world respected. Now, this fragile girl was teaching him that compassion could silence even the loudest chaos inside. But peace, for men like him, never lasted long. One evening, as Alara returned from the kitchen, she found her room ransacked. The bed overturned, the bloodied cloth scattered. Adrian was gone. Her heart leapt in panic. She rushed into the hall, only to hear distant gunfire from the far end of the estate. Shouts. Sirens. She froze. They had found him. The police, or worse, his enemies. She ran through the rain-soaked corridors, her bare feet slipping on the marble floors, until she reached the back garden. There, in the dim glow of lightning, she saw him, wounded again, surrounded by men in black. Adrian's men had come for him. The moment they saw Alara, they aimed their guns, mistaking her for a threat. Adrian, despite his pain, stepped in front of her, taking a bullet meant for her shoulder. "She's not one of them," he roared, his voice echoing through the storm. The men froze. Alara screamed, catching him as he fell to his knees. Rain mixed with blood as she pressed against his wound, her tears falling like the storm itself. When the chaos subsided and his men carried him away, Adrian refused to leave without looking at her one last time. "You saved me," he whispered hoarsely. No one ever did that before. She didn't know what to say. She only watched as the cars disappeared into the night, taking away the stranger who had entered her life like a storm and left just as suddenly. Weeks passed. Life in the mansion returned to its dull rhythm, but Alara's heart wasn't the same. She often stared at the window where she'd last seen him, wondering if he was alive, if he remembered her. She didn't expect to ever see him again. But one morning, as she stepped outside with a basket of laundry, she found a small envelope pinned to the gate. Inside was a note written in careful, elegant handwriting. "To the girl who saved my soul. You taught me that mercy still exists in this world. I've left behind the life that destroyed me. And if someday you open that bakery by the sea, look for a man with a scar on his shoulder. He'll be there to buy your first loaf. A." Tears blurred her vision. For the first time in years, she smiled, softly, deeply, as the wind brushed against her face. Somewhere, out there, the man the world once feared was learning to live again, because a poor maid had shown him what humanity still meant. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to StoryNest to support more stories about kindness, redemption, and second chances. And before you go, tell us in the comments, do you believe one small act of kindness can change a life forever? Because sometimes, it's not power or wealth that saves a soul, it's the compassion of someone who has nothing but a heart willing to care.